sales should get to them first, but I'd like to think as a great marketer, I can warm up and build awareness around those accounts. So when sales does reach out, they're aware of who we are and what our value proposition is to them, how we solve their problems.
Welcome to the Modern Marketing Engine podcast, hosted by Bernie Borges. This is the podcast for the modern marketer who wants to hear from their peers in the trenches and the occasional analyst or rockstar influencer, sharing strategies and tactics about what's working in modern marketing. Be sure to listen to the end of each episode for Bernie's summary and takeaways so you can plan your next move in your own modern marketing journey.
Hey there, welcome to episode 244 of the Modern Marketing Engine podcast. I'm Bernie Borges, CMO of Ingresso, and your host. Hey, thanks for listening. Hey, this episode is brought to you by Subtitle, a new online tool that makes it easy to automatically add captions to any video in minutes. Don't let your videos get passed over on social media because people can't follow along on mute. Head over to subtitle.com/Vengresso to get started. My guest on this episode is Sydney Sloan, CMO of SalesLoft. Sydney, welcome to the Modern Marketing Engine podcast.
Thank you, Bernie. It's great to be here. I just realized, say, Sydney Sloan from SalesLoft fast, and that's hard to do.
I'm not going to try. I've already learned that. Well, Sydney, we are here. The main topic of this episode is ABM, modern ABM strategy in action. And I'm really excited about this topic. Before we dive into it, though, for my listener who perhaps may not be familiar with your company, SalesLoft, why don't you give us a little overview? Who is SalesLoft?
Sure. SalesLoft is the number one sales engagement technology. We're the leader in our space, and it's a fun time to be in the sales platform technology space. I became to know SalesLoft when we were looking on how do we improve the way that we connect with our customers. That's what we focus on. Our goal is to help organizations deliver value and create trust by helping sales teams connect authentically and meaningfully with their customers. And the way that we do that is we have a way that we can set up the way that you run your sales plays and codify those into a rhythm of how you might email and call and connect with your customers, and do that in a way that helps the salespeople save time, create efficiency. We just finished a study with Forrester that for customers that use SalesLoft, they were finding that they were able to increase their conversion rates from SQL to opportunity by 2.5 times, save sales time, and the average salesperson saving 20% of their week, which to me is a free day.
Yeah.
Exactly. Increase their conversion rates. And ultimately, the sales teams that use SalesLoft keep their employees 50% longer. So people like working in environments that have technology and a platform like SalesLoft.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting how technology-centric sales has become, the sales profession. And I think that's a good segue into our topic here of account-based marketing, ABM, or as you and I decided that we would characterize it for purposes of this podcast, which is modern ABM strategy in action. You and I both know that account-based marketing is not a new thing. It's been around for a while. So why don't we begin with what is modern ABM? What is this thing that we're calling modern account-based marketing?
It makes me reflect, it's been almost 10 years ago where when I was at Adobe working on their enterprise business, we created this team. We called ourselves customer marketing, and we were working on strategic accounts. And so the 5 of us identified 3 accounts each. They were all $10 million plus accounts. And we went in and we started to assess how was our technology being used? What was our relationship? Who were our key stakeholders? And it was amazing at that time to understand that in an account like Nike, we had over 20 different people selling into different parts of Nike, and those were not connected together. And you could say the same for T-Mobile and UBS, all these really large accounts that were spending millions of dollars with us. But we weren't looking at it from the customer's perspective, the customer in. We were looking at it from each one of our microcosms. And so we were able to transform the way that we established our relationship with those accounts and the way that we served those accounts. And it was done manually at that time. And so when I think about, my first experiences in doing things that were quote unquote account based at that time, it was a lot of manual effort. And now fast forward to today, there's technologies, a category, a strategy around account based. And for me, that starts with knowing your customer. The second thing is 100% alignment between sales and marketing. If those two things don't happen, you can't have an account-based strategy.
So let's unpack those, because what you've really started to talk about is your 5 pillars of modern account-based marketing. And you said the first one, Sydney, is knowing your customer. And I think you've already given some example of that in what you did 10 years ago at Adobe. But in terms of today, how do we get to know our customer today in this crazy digital world that we live in?
Exactly. It starts with, and it's interesting, coming into SalesLoft, we were already 100% account-based. There's so much information out there. So when I say know your customer, that's the ideal customer profile, the ICP as a lot of us refer to it. Mm-hmm. And that's the foundation for developing your target account list. And so you think about the parameters that might make up your account. It could be the industry they're in, the problems they're solving, the other technologies they might be using, any other information that is unique to the industry or the problems that you're trying to solve, where from my perspective, you can use data to help score and identify potential organizations for you to go after, as well as your existing accounts. And that should make up your initial universe of the target accounts or that would be in your profile. The second part of that is then scoring those accounts. And again, bringing technology to bear, new sources of data, things like intent scores, activity and engagement scores. So now you have technologies out there that will show you, is someone in that account actually looking for the technology that you provide or the services that you provide? Another way is the level of engagement that those accounts are having with you on the properties that you can monitor and manage. And so the combination of that, those parameters around identifying your ICP, and then additional signals that are out there in the market that help you prioritize the total list of accounts for you to engage with.
Okay, terrific. Now, obviously, you need some technology to do all that. How are you integrating that technology between marketing and sales, which is your second pillar, right? Aligning marketing and sales, both from a strategy standpoint, but also from a technology standpoint, right?
Mm-hmm. So over the years, with different account-based strategies, different folks have owned the identification of the target account list. I think that's the first identification, is aligning marketing and sales, that you are going to have an account-based strategy and you're going to stick to it, and you agree on the accounts that make up your target account list. And so what we've done is, and many people, is you start to tier. So there's tier 1s, tier 2s, tier 3s. Our tier 1s we've identified as 10 in each of our segments. So we have total of 20 tier 1 accounts. And I'm happy to say we just did a report last year. We didn't lose a single account in our tier 1s. Those were all closed ones for us. So we did a great job of partnering together. Thank you. With our account teams and our sales teams. And that's where you get really hyper personalized. You care and feed our goals of incrementally adding contacts in meaningful ways, setting up one-on-one opportunities for our salespeople to meet with folks in those target accounts, and then managing it through the entire customer experience. In previous lives, I've done that where, like my last company was top 50 accounts, and a lot of those accounts were our existing accounts where we had a lot of white space or greenfield to move into. And so it was all a care and nurture and feeding and growing accounts. And so I make sure that as people are thinking about their top tiers, it should be a combination of existing accounts and new targets to go after.
The tier definitions, is that something that's done between marketing and sales together, or do you advocate one really driving that process?
It's both. I used to let sales pick. I would come up with or my teams would come up with, here's the parameters, here's the scoring, but at the end of the day, sales, you pick, because at the end of the day, it's your livelihood. I'm not convinced that was the right approach. And over time, just marketing having so much more information about accounts and that access to intent data, that it's a combination. It's a handshake. We actually have 2 leaders now, our head of sales strategy and our head of demand gen, that work on that list together. And so I think that's the best, where everybody's participating. We have a monthly meeting where we check in, we review accounts, we review status on accounts, engagement levels in those accounts. And it's the CRO and me and our teams that are sitting in and looking at those accounts, because the top ones, we're investing jointly our time and money on making sure that we're doing right by those customers. And so it's a combination.
Okay, that makes sense. I love that collaboration. That's truly marketing and sales alignment in action. Love that. And then your third pillar is implementing the tools and technology. And I'm just going to quickly remark on, kind of state the obvious here, Sydney, because we opened the conversation by saying that account-based marketing has been around for a while. You even said 10 years ago you were doing it, but it was very manual. And fast forward to today, and really ABM is predicated on using tools and technology the right way. So how do we do that?
Yep. So I'll start with the marketing and then go into the sales. That we do it in the way that I've studied it so far. And that really is, first and foremost, once you have your target accounts, leveraging tools like ABM tools, Terminus, demand base is where I start my thinking. You already have your CRM, and then you want some kind of tool like that that's going to help you in identifying levels of engagement, pulling in intent from the greater open web and bringing that to you so you can start to map the companies that are out there currently looking for what you're providing, and then serving up the ads that are going to warm up those accounts. And so it's that combination between intent and then driving your awareness investment. So we invest heavily in LinkedIn and then across the other networks that they're part of to be able to surround those accounts and get them aware of SalesLoft and offering them great content. That's the other key.
Okay.
Relevant, great content based on their profile to draw them in. And that's our number one conversion in bringing accounts that we're targeting to our teams. This is the handoff point where we're a little provocative. We don't use marketing automation. We have marketing automation tools. We use it for our events, but we don't use it as part of our nurture process, because if we've identified that target account, we want that first interaction to be a human one between our sales development reps and that customer account. We vie for, but our philosophy at SalesLoft is that sales should get to them first, but I'd like to think as a great marketer, I can warm up and build awareness around those accounts. So when sales does reach out, they're aware of who we are and what our value proposition is to them, how we solve their problems. And so those immediately go into SalesLoft to start managing a sales cadence of engaging those contacts while marketing is still trying to drive net new contacts for that account into the account that we're working.
You may not know that at Vengresso, we have this part of our practice, part of our three pillars is content for sales enablement. And in that, we talk about vaulted content, meaning content that is available to salespeople behind some kind of a private login, and it's made available to them by some combination of persona, interest, need, industry, whatever the parameters are, case by case. So is that the kind of thing you're referring to by giving your sales team the content that they need to create that engagement?
What I mean is the way that we structure that, I talked about that rhythm, the orchestration of how we engage accounts. So if somebody comes to us or we're already proactively reaching account, they're doing the outbound. They're doing the hard work part of trying to engage via email, phone, text, whatever, direct mail. So that's the design of the cadence that SalesLoft orchestrates in us engaging with those accounts. And marketing is trying to bring in net new people as well through all the activities that we do. I talked about advertising, but it's also going to events, hosting events, other direct mail activities that we might be doing. So everything that's in our toolkit to also bring those customers to our teams so we can start that one-to-one dialogue between our sales teams and the prospect or our customer.
Okay, interesting.
It could be content, Bernie, that's also available to the sales reps that are specific to their cadences based on that type of profile of the customer.
Sure.
So there is an alignment there.
Sure. And is most of your targeted advertising on LinkedIn, or do you mix that up?
We mix it up. That's our primary investment area. We've gotten the best return on investment there, but we also use the Google ads and retargeting as well.
Okay, great. We'll be back in a moment with the rest of my conversation with Sydney Sloan. If you're creating video for social media, you know how important it is to have captions on all of your videos. Really, think of how many times you've passed over a video on social because your phone was muted or you were in a public place or even at work. Unfortunately, adding a caption to videos has been a pain or an expensive task to outsource. That's exactly why we use Subtitle, a new online tool that automatically adds captions to any video in minutes. Subtitle auto-detects the spoken word in your videos and burns in open captions that are timed perfectly. Their easy editing interface even helps you clean up the text and customize the captions so that they fit your branding. Visit zubtitle.com/Bengresso today to get started. I think it's a great segue then to, now that we've talked about knowing your customer and alignment between marketing and sales and using the tools and technology, now you talk about the pillar of execution, and that's doing it as one team. So you want to elaborate on what you mean by that, Sydney?
When you think about the complexities around B2B selling today, the number of people involved in the buying process, the process that the customer goes through is continuing to expand and getting more and more complex. And so when you think about orchestrating as one team, first of all, understanding the customer dynamic, what makes up that customer, the problem they have, and then the people that are involved in making the ultimate decision, and the investment of success in using your platforms. Aligned with your sales teams, you might have 15 or 20 people involved in that deal, in that sales cycle. And so how do you make sure that everybody is informed and that you're continuing the context through that? So when I think of that, I think of, you're going through managing of the deal. And so what we think about is, how do you keep context of the conversation? So you're wanting to make sure that every interaction is recorded, and it could be a phone conversation, it could be an email exchange, it could be a meeting. And so we're investing heavily in the SalesLoft platform and how we integrate with other tools to being able to capture, record that, and then keep that front and center for anybody that's involved in managing that account over the lifetime of that account. So now all of a sudden you have context of every interaction, understanding the different players. LinkedIn is doing some cool investment in this area as well with their LinkedIn sales solutions in trying to help people map what's going on in the customer account, and then how do you align your teams to best serve them.
So what I hear you saying is that everyone who's involved in a deal has access to the SalesLoft platform, and therefore they're able to see every single interaction that's been taking place across the life cycle of that deal.
Exactly. And it's written back to Salesforce as well. If people don't have a SalesLoft account, they can see the notes and records within Salesforce and then pull reports from that, et cetera. So it can span both platforms.
Okay. And then your fifth pillar is one that it uses nomenclature that I think anybody that's been in B2B sales for any period of time has heard or used or lived the phrase land and expand. Mm-hmm. It's especially prevalent when you're talking about account-based selling, marketing, whatever we happen to call it, because by its very nature, these are big accounts that we're selling to. And in most cases, there's lots and lots of opportunity there. So in the context of modern ABM, what do you mean by land and expand?
When I left Adobe back in 2011, we'd been talking about this idea around customer experience management. And what I saw the opportunity in SaaS-based companies, or the move to SaaS, that all of a sudden the dynamic changed. It's easier for customers to switch, and you have to work as hard to maintain your existing accounts as you do to acquire net new. And so I think of land and expand. You could think of it in the traditional way of, yes, I get one deal and then I sell another deal, sell another deal, sell another deal. I'd like to erase that from memory, and I have the opportunity to serve this customer. And now my goal in life is to make them wildly successful so that it expands within their account. They continue to get more and more value from that. And then we build a long-standing relationship with that customer to the point where, and this is my favorite thing, when somebody leaves that customer account, bring SalesLoft to their next new customer because of the relationship that we've been able to establish together. I did write land and expand back then, but it really is developing a long-standing customer relationship and cultivating that and serving that customer in a way that exceeds their expectations. That's our goal. Not just meet, but exceed the expectations, and to build that long-standing relationship. Now, you could break it down into, yes, I've got an entry point here, and I want to be able to talk to that customer, make them successful, figure out where that next step in the process is, where I can create the opportunity to expand and deliver more value to them. But yeah, I think I would rewrite land and expand now.
Yeah. And I'm also thinking of just, my listenership, right? Which of course can be across a variety of different industries. And there's a lot of B2B companies out there, Sydney, that have multiple lines of products and services.
Mhm.
So landing and expanding in that environment can mean, okay, we're in the door in one division or one part of the company with one of our offerings, products, services, whatever. How can we build on this relationship so that we can attempt to deliver more value across our other lines within our portfolio?
Yeah, I have a great story for this one, Bernie. Back in the day, when it was early days for Adobe serving the marketing customers and selling into large enterprises, but everybody knew who Adobe was. And so our sales teams would go in and they'd bring a copy of Photoshop and they'd say, here's your copy of Photoshop. Now I'd like to talk to you about why I'm here, which wasn't Photoshop. You do have that ability to take the brand awareness or the success that you've had inside an account and then market that internally within the account. And one of the programs that I've seen be very successful is we used to call them account days. We call them Adobe days. I call them alfresco days. I've used this now across multiple companies that we've worked in. But once you have that established success story inside of a large account, to use that as an opportunity to do cross-selling and upselling as that customer as a case study. So you go in, you set up a half-day education program. You let your existing customers talk about how they use your technology today, and then you use that as a way to educate other people on either incremental offerings that you have or new ways or new divisions that could use your solution that's currently being used in one division that can expand to another.
Love it, especially when the customer's doing it. They're kind of boasting about their success. You've made them successful. They're talking about it. And
exactly.
In the course, they're selling for you. Love it. All right. Well, we are at that point in the podcast, Sydney, where I am going to recap the highlights of what we discussed. And then I'm going to ask you to comment, elaborate on anything that you want to add. And then we'll ask you where our listener can connect with you. And then we'll bring this episode to a wrap. So we started our conversation with an introduction to SalesLoft, the number one leader in sales technology. It's really a company that's helping salespeople build trust and connect authentically and meaningfully with their customers by really codifying a whole cadence of activities to provide that rhythm efficiently and deliver some incredible productivities. I think you said Forrester reported 2.5 times conversion rates from SQL to opportunity. Did I get that right?
You did. That's correct.
Wow, that's amazing. So we, of course, talked about modern ABM strategy in action. And you said that, hey, back in the day, 10 years ago, when you were at Adobe, you were doing, even though you may not have called it account-based marketing, but you were focused on strategic accounts. I think you said you had 5 accounts each one being multiple millions of dollars in revenue. And you discovered that a lot of different people were calling on those accounts. And even though it was a very manual effort, you discovered you weren't really looking at it from the customer's perspective. So if you really fast forward to today's modern approach to account-based marketing, it starts with knowing your customer and knowing your ideal customer profile, your ICP. And that allows you to develop the account list, whether it's by industry, by problem you're solving, and then use data to score it and to identify the target companies that you want to reach, which can include existing customers, identify what that universe of customers are, and then using the scoring data to score intent, activity, and engagement. And then that allows you to work very closely with marketing and sales, or aligning marketing and sales, which is your second pillar, right? And that is identifying the top 3 tiers of companies. And, 3 is perhaps your number, but other companies may have 2 tiers, 5 tiers, whatever it may be. And really with the top 1 tier, make it easy for salespeople to get hyper personalized and allow them to create the one-on-one meetings that they need. And then we talked about how marketing is the one that really has the most information on the accounts. So marketing and sales really need to come together. You said that at SalesLoft, it's a head of sales strategy and demand gen that work together on the ongoing development of that list. Did I get that right, Sydney?
Yes, you did.
Okay. And then, of course, you can't do that without tools and technology. And that's pillar number 3, implementing the right tools and technology. And that's using tools such as Terminus or Demandbase. And really, again, identifying the levels of engagement and intent, map those companies that you know are looking for services like yours. And then from a marketing standpoint, attract companies that are looking using things like ad and content. You mentioned that you're doing advertising on primarily LinkedIn, but also some Google AdWords, and then offering them great content. and really enabling the salespeople to be the first interaction, the human-human interaction. And then, of course, you're supplementing that with marketing activities such as advertising, events, direct mail, et cetera, to attract companies that are looking to your brand. Then it's all about execution, and you've got to execute as one team. You mentioned that B2B sales is as complex as it's ever been. There's a lot of people involved in the buying process, and correspondingly is also often a lot of people involved in the selling process. So you've got to allow everyone to understand the context of the conversation up to the minute so that they understand exactly what interaction has taken place. So within SalesLoft, you provide that ability in your company so that, and your customers, of course, so that they know exactly what interactions have been recorded and it's accessible to everyone involved in the deal. And that brings us to our fifth and final pillar, and that is, as you are working with an account, you want to be able to expand, right? We talk about the proverbial land and expand. You shared your Adobe experience, how you had to work hard to keep the current customer. And instead of necessarily thinking in terms of expanding by getting more business out of them, which of course we want to do, but it's really more about making the customer so successful that you build a very strong, long-standing relationship. Even if the individuals leave, they take you with them to their next opportunity. But you gave the experience of, I think you called it Adobe Days, where you have like a half-day educational program and the customer really talks about how they're using your technology, your tools, and how they're solving problems with it. And it's very educational, and that allows you to get exposure within the account and, of course, grow the opportunity within the account. So altogether, the 5 pillars, once again, are know your customer, have marketing and sales aligned, implement the right tools and technology, execute as one team, and then land and expand. So Sydney, I'll end my summary there. Is there anything that you would like to add?
I think the one thing that I would add is, if you could get all that done, which is not easy, it takes time to identify your ideal customer accounts, to build that target account list, to build the contacts that are associated with those target accounts. It takes time. So know that, it's a journey. But once you get there, then you can take that next level of sophistication and start to build out programs based on the stage of the customer journey that the customer is in. So if they're not yet a customer, if they're in your sales stages of an active opportunity, once they become a customer, those first critical 90 days, and then the ongoing relationship. So if you're thinking about your marketing organization and your sales organization, start to think about it in the structure of the customer journey and the programs and messages that you would segment based on that, because it does change over time.
Absolutely. The customer journey. I've also heard it called the customer's path, but it's semantics. Same thing. Yep. Great point. Well, Sydney, before we ask where can the listener connect with you, you just came off a pretty successful event, your annual event called Rainmaker. So as you share with my listener where they can connect with you, let's make sure they know how to learn about Rainmaker for next year.
Yes, thank you. It was such a success. We had over 1,500 people in Atlanta. It was our 6th year. Keynote speakers like Danny Meyer from Shake Shack and Colin O'Brady, who is the first man to transcend Antarctica unaided. It was incredible.
Wow.
We are going to also do something incredible. And for the first time, we're taking Rainmaker to San Francisco. So we announced that in 2020, Rainmaker will be engaging in San Francisco, March 3rd to the 5th. We have promotions already set up on our website if you'd like to sign up at this year's rates. San Francisco is a little bit more expensive than Atlanta, so you can lock in those rates now. And we'd love to see all of our customers and anyone really learning how to become more of a modern seller or a marketer serving the modern selling motion at Rainmaker 2020.
And typical attendees, are they sales leaders, marketing leaders, sales enablement, CEOs, all the above?
All the above. Sales operations, marketing operations, sales leaders, sales managers, and anybody that is in the act of serving customers on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, fantastic. And Sydney, where can my listener connect with you online and learn more about what you've got going on?
Sure. I am at Sid Sloan on Twitter and LinkedIn. That's where best to reach me. We'd also encourage you to come to salesloft.com to peruse our thought leadership content and be inspired by people that inspire us.
Fantastic. Well, Sydney, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Modern Marketing Engine podcast. If you've ever wondered how we at Vingresso get those cool captions to any video on social media, Well, wonder no more. Use Subtitle so your videos stand out by visiting subtitle.com/Ben Gresso.
This wraps up another inspiring episode of the Modern Marketing Engine podcast. If you want to share this podcast with a friend, let them know that we're available on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Podcasts. And we love 5-star reviews. If you are not subscribed yet, please hit the subscribe button on your favorite podcast player so you don't miss an episode. You can read the show notes for each episode at bengresso.com. While you're there, sign up to receive the show notes delivered to your inbox through our weekly alerts. And be sure to also check out our Selling with Social podcast hosted by Ben Gresso CEO, Mario Martinez Jr. Again, you'll find our show notes at bengresso.com. And that's one S in Ben Gresso. Tune in again next week when Bernie Borges brings you another inspiring interview to help you thrive on your modern marketing journey.